All right. So, does anyone of you have a problem if I do this talk in English? No. Okay. So first of all, thanks to everyone for coming. I'm really glad to see so many people coming and like still so many people interested in, let's say, independence and self-governance. And first of all, about myself, my name is Erik Vollstädt. I'm Bitnation's lead ambassador and now community director. And basically, I've been working for Bitnation already since 3 years. Like first as a volunteer, and now I'm full-time employed. And I'm traveling all over Europe and now even Latin America to, let's say, create more community engagement and to do these meetups and to also coordinate the global ambassador network. And yeah, I will just, let's say, give you a short overview of our Bitnation by showing you a video. I hope, no, we have problems with speakers. I hope you can hear it from my laptop.
Before,
yeah, maybe if you turn on that light, it will be better for reaching the screen.
Much better. Yeah. Thanks.
Nations before borders. There was the Pangea supercontinent. Since then, the world has been divided by tectonic shifts, widening oceans, and stifling politics. Nation-states are crumbling under the weight of local and global challenges that they seem incapable of solving. Rather than embracing a borderless world and increasing personal freedoms, governments and multilateral organizations have overseen a surge in bureaucracy, protectionism, and ever greater intrusions into our personal lives. To prevent a drift towards tyranny, we need drastic change. Pangea is Bitnation's decentralized jurisdiction platform. Using Pangea, you can build voluntary nations, agree contracts, and resolve disputes with other citizens, and access the services you need. This is our vision of Jurisdiction as a Service, a global market for governance services. The Pangea Arbitration Token, or PAT, is an Ethereum-based in-app token that powers the Pangea platform. When you create a contract, complete a contract, or resolve a dispute on Pangea, you receive non-tradable reputation tokens through Lucy, our AI bot. Accumulating reputation tokens earns you tradable PAT tokens. This ensures that you can't buy a good reputation or acquire it through popularity, but if you earn one, you will be rewarded. Imagine a world where people can freely choose which voluntary nations and jurisdictions they want to be part of. A world where voluntary nations offer a choice of services under their own laws and policies and compete for citizens in a free market that rewards good governance. You too can be part of the future of governance by joining the Pangea token sale. Welcome to the Internet of Sovereignty. Welcome to Pangea.
Yeah. So first of all, about my personal background, why I'm involved in Bitnation, why I think that this actually makes a difference. So I come from an anarchist background, and I was looking for ways how to change, let's say, how things are working in our society and how, let's say, people can govern themselves, even though, let's say, we live in a world where we just have to accept the rules that we're born in. And you know, like there's politics and there's democracy, and you can run a campaign and you can try to change the things from within the system. But over time, I realized that if you actually want to change, let's say, how not only, let's say, the government itself works, but how the whole state as the entire body works, you cannot change things by just running a political campaign, because in the time that you try to achieve power, you will be compromised, or you will somehow have to give up on your principles in order to achieve power. So instead of running every 4 years for campaigns and hoping that at some point we can change things through the people that we keep electing, we should just try to build something new that makes the old model obsolete, and just try to opt into an alternative. So this is what blockchain is about, and this is what, let's say, the Bitnation is about offering opt-out solutions without having to move geographically. But first of all, like, the realization here is that you can also change things just by writing code, and by having enough people who use this code to actually create a new reality. And so basically the question that we pose with Bitnation is, would you like to choose your governance services the same way you choose your phone provider or any other service provider? Because in any other market or industry, like, you have a huge array of alternatives, and just in the governance market somehow we are made believe that you can only have this, like, you're born in Spain, you're born in Germany, you're born in Norway, for example, and you just have to accept the things, how the things work, and there's no way, let's say, to change anything. You just have to leave the country if you don't like the rules. And yeah, like, we want to change the conception of this by saying, why isn't there any competitor? Why isn't there any way to opt out? And like, I will show you what happens, because we live in this kind of paradigm. But first of all, one of our ambassadors, Tetsuo Ishii, he said, the blockchain is not just for money. It's there for brand new governance structures, replacing the nation-state concept from the Napoleon era. Digital nomads like me know that national borders are imaginary. Our activities are global, but most governance systems are still for locals only. So as a digital nomad, you already realize that the things, like, I mean, how the governments of the world provide their services are only made for locals only, not for people like digital nomads who cross borders every day and who don't have this kind of geographically limited lifestyle anymore. Like, they transcend borders, and the way governance services are designed do not suit them for the way they live their lives. And further, the government marriage system is one of the most obsolete systems today. Marriage is a very personal matter, but it's being enforced by governments, and the laws are so different in each country. So, for example, we have many countries where gay marriage, for example, is forbidden, and people who want to do so to save their assets basically are persecuted because they do not comply, let's say, with the local religion or with the way people think. So they have no choice but to leave the country. And I think this is a very big requirement, let's say, for service, to actually have to move geographically just to consume the service, which in this case would be the marriage legal service. So in general, like for any other service, you would expect that the people who want to give you a service come to you and not you to them. But for governments, somehow the things are turned upside down, and we have to just actively move somewhere else just to consume better services. So basically, the state of the world is that we live in a global geographical governance only globally, which we know as the nation states. So everywhere you go, you have a nation state which is claiming the monopoly force, let's say, over the laws and the constitution of that place, the territory. And this geographical divide in the world leads to wars, injustice, corruption, and taxes. And basically, since more and more the countries are just trying to gain power, they will fight with each other, and this will lead to wars, which we have seen so many times in the last centuries. And these governance providers, they do not compete in their territory, obviously, because they're monopolists in their territory. And they have no incentive to provide better services because, they have no competition. And as you know, like in a monopoly situation, you can just offer worse quality, and your customers, the citizens in this case, they just have to accept the way the things are. And basically, if there was a competition, they would obviously have an incentive to offer the best quality product, because else they would lose their source of income. And another one of our ambassadors, Peter Rivera, he said, I want to create tools that people can use to manage themselves in society. The conventional law-based system is very weak for the society we live in nowadays. People with enough money or intelligence can manipulate and use it against society, as we've seen many times. So in Colombia, he already knows that politics is mostly about popularity contest, and it's not so much about the actual content, about bringing, let's say, change or representing the people. It's much more just about giving free goods to people so they will vote for you. And if you have, let's say, enough money and enough intelligence, you can just use the system against the people and for you. And instead of using this like conventional law-based system, he would prefer to actually offer people the tools to govern themselves instead of relying on this kind of false representation. So further, we also have two like major obstacles in the world, which I would also call the global apartheid. First of all, there are 2 billion adults in the world that are currently unbanked. So all of these people have no way to access our financial services. They can not get any loans to start their company, to realize their dreams, so they cannot even get, I don't know, the way to access financial services. And further, we also have the visa system in the world, which makes it possible for people all over the world, just because they were born in one place, to live and work in another place which they like better. So we have lots of people in the world with bad passports, and mostly it's also the people of the same place. So these people are the gray economy, which would be the second biggest economy in the world after the United States. And this is a huge, waste of potential, because these people are also, let's say, potential resource for the global economy, and we basically just shut them out because of visa and because there's not enough technological infrastructure in their home countries. And another one of our ambassadors, Christoph Feuermann, he said, passports are by no means necessary. Unfortunately, the global apartheid condemns millions of people to stay in their impoverished home countries. My hopes rest in the Bitnation platform, which possibly provides everyone in the world with a unique ID on the blockchain, which could be recognized as official travel documents by governments. So I know this sounds very far-fetched, but actually passports are just about offering a way to identify people, and they have to be approved by some sort of authority. In this case, this authority could be the blockchain itself, which is a consensus of thousands of nodes all over the world, who basically decide whether someone's claim is true or not. And of course, there still has to be like research done and to find the proper way how to actually verify that someone's ID on the blockchain is real. But in general, I think the idea that you can have a universal way of proving your identity, which is independent from nation states, I think this should be very appealing for many people in the world. And yes, should eventually be recognized by nation states as well. And this is what this kind of passport could look like. I mean, this is just a very old version from 2014, but just to give you an idea, I mean, you would have the public key here, which is like your identity on the blockchain. You have an expiration date. You have the QR code, so I don't know, a customs officer could just check that it's true, that this is really this person. And you have the timestamp, which is one essential feature of blockchain. So I don't know, maybe some of you already know what timestamping is, but it basically means that when you make a transaction on either the Bitcoin blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, or whichever blockchain, you put a hash on top of it. And basically when you repeat this process of creating this hash, and it's somehow different, you will already know that this is not the real one. So in order to prove the originality and the authenticity of the document, you can just simply repeat the timestamp, and you will know, okay, this is really the real version that was timestamped at this point in time. And you can prove that, for example, someone is the owner of a land title, of an ID, or of a contract. And basically this way of timestamping is the ideal way of notarization, which is like automated, which is completely independent from corrupt nation-state officials. And it can help people to record marriage contracts, wills, birth certificates, childcare contracts, land titles, or business deals in a completely sovereign and independent manner, so completely independent from how the administration in their local nation states work. Because here, more or less, it's working fine, but imagine, for example, in third world countries, many times one has to bribe the officials to actually get a document, or many times the records are corrupted. So this would be like, let's say, more like trustworthy way of actually doing these things, because you don't need to trust humans on the blockchain, you just trust the protocol. And these documents are permanently secure because, yeah, you have thousands of nodes, for example, on the Bitcoin blockchain, who basically maintain the whole transaction history. And you can at any time, at any point in time, verify this claim is true by checking the, let's say, browser of that blockchain. And yeah, you can prove the ownership of these titles at any point in time. And another one of our ambassadors, Africanus Kofi Akosa, he said, most of the properties in my country have no titles because of cumbersome processes and corruption. Decentralized land administration, accessible to everyone, is what is needed, and the blockchain offers that very cheap. Sooner or later, the state is going to become obsolete. So I know this sounds very extreme, but it's true that in Ghana, the administration is registering only very few land properties, and this is a huge source of conflicts for example, farmers who don't have any legitimate ownership of any of their like land property. So when they, for example, want to rent the land or to build buildings on that, they have no legal infrastructure to actually prove it. So the blockchain could step in there and just geotag, let's say, these properties and put them on the blockchain to yeah, step in and provide a service that the government did not provide before that instance. But eventually this should also be possible for other services which are already provided, but provide them in a better and higher quality manner and accessible to everyone in the world, not just based on your nationality.
Yeah, but I think there is a big problem, because for doing that you need technology, and those countries have no technology, and the countries that we have the technology, we have a very solid state that in a way step beyond us and this new technology to
okay, about technology, wait for the next slide. So we already have 60% of all cell phone users in the world in developing countries, and actually even in these kind of places where you think, okay, these people are so poor, there's no internet connection, they still have smartphones. Like it sounds like a miracle, but yes, most of these people do already have, let's say, the technology to do this, and what is lacking is the infrastructure. And you also have like lots of chat applications like WeChat, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and so on. And most of these people are using that already in some way or another. And there's also a huge demand for legal services worldwide. It's a market of $600 billion each year. And this is basically the total cost of using the traditional legal systems. And this is like a huge waste of money, in our opinion, because you could cut down the costs by introducing alternatives.
Yeah, just quickly,
yes,
make a small comment on what you said. Those countries, it's surprising actually if you read a little bit about what's going on in Africa in some countries. That in many countries, right there, they introduced a mobile credit system, which is you're using your SIM card as your bank account, basically, and the technology that they are using and the exchange of you actually call and you pay with your cell phone, and there are even payment apps, and in many ways, some of those countries, they are actually much more advanced than we are here in Europe, because they actually jumped through all the visa, all the bank, all everything, and just immediately jumped into this mobile payment systems. And you'd be surprised, and many of this how many technological advances in some of the African countries. When you read about it, you think, oh my God, those guys are like 3 steps ahead of us in some ways. So like as literacy, at some point technological literacy, let's put it that way, digital literacy will get everywhere and everybody will know how to use mobile phones. And there have been experiments with completely illiterate tribes when they get a tablet and how fast they understand how programming works, how fast they understand how apps work. So I would say it seems like a problem at first, but actually if you make some tests, if you do a research, it's not that big of a problem, and within 5 to 10 years, it really could be solved.
Mm.
Sorry.
No, it's nice to know, because I was like 2 years ago in Vietnam and Cambodia, and what I saw there is like very, very, very few people could access to, for example, a computer with connection to internet. There were some places where the people went, but normally people didn't have any computer or any cell phone. Some specific person, like not the regular people, have it, but it's true that technology is every day cheaper than yesterday, so that could be a solution.
Okay, can we do the discussion?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So actually to explain what we actually provide, so to solve these problems, we created software called Pangea, like the supercontinent Pangea. Why do we use this metaphor? Because basically in Pangea was a unified world. There was no geographical division between, let's say, continents or borders, like all of these concepts that we have nowadays in our heads. Just by being born in these concepts, let's say, we think, okay, there's 200 countries and we're like so divided between cultures, religions, and so on. But essentially, we're all on the same planet, and we're all humans. We try to, let's say, bring the whole thing back by saying, okay, now you can use Pangea where everyone is equal, everyone can access equal government services. And yeah, what we offer is we basically create a decentralized mobile chat app interface where you can have highly encrypted conversations, and at the same time you can, through these conversations, create peer-to-peer agreements, like trade agreements. And this is done through smart contracts on either blockchains, but possibly also in the future on other platforms. So we are basically building this in a blockchain agnostic way. So right now we're using Ethereum, but in the future we will also be able to deploy other blockchains, but more about that later. And at the same time, while you create these contracts, we also have a market for arbitration, because we know that this is like one of the biggest problems, to actually settle disputes. And there will be a market for that. So let's say smart lawyers will offer their services pseudonymously, and also the transaction partners in this transaction web, they're pseudonymous. They don't have to give away their physical identities, because we know that this is also a huge problem, that they can be traced down by their governments. And these arbitrators, they will compete for reputation and for clients, which are in this case citizens. Because in today's system, judges don't need to compete or to, let's say, have a good reputation to keep their job. Because, yeah, just by being employed by the government, they will basically have their job until they retire. So there's no need, let's say, to actually make their customers satisfied. In many cases, and processes in courts take a lot of time and take a huge amount of money. Because, yeah, there's no competition. Just the people who go through this court process just have to accept it, because there's no alternative. But here we offer an alternative, and we actually have a market of arbitrators who all have their specific expertise, specifically for the kind of law that is being used for these contracts. And furthermore, people can create and join virtual nations, which are decentralized, borderless, voluntary nations, which means that, of course, they have no, let's say, geographical power or like power over some geographical territory like our existing nation states. But for us, nations is basically a group of people with a common set of interests and sort of common culture and language. It doesn't have to be necessarily physical like physical pertinence to some geographical place. So what would this kind of, let's say, contract on Pangea look like? So first of all, you look for your counterparty based on their reputation. So we also have an internal reputation function. You basically, together with your counterparty through the chat and through a chat bot, which will assist you, will understand natural language, you will generate the smart contract, choose the code of law that you need for your contract, and you can even create your own new law for this specific agreement that also other people can choose later on for their agreements. So it's also not only a market for arbitrators, but also a market for laws. And yeah, you choose your arbitrator, choose potentially witnesses who will survey and who will supervise, let's say, the whole procedure and control, let's say, what is happening, but only if you want to. And you physically, let's say, each of them signs the some sort of piece of paper or anything, and this will be timestamped. So later on, when you have this document, you can prove that this was the original contract that both of them signed. And something that we think that will be really beneficial for all of these pseudonymous agreements is to create an escrow. So maybe you heard about multi-sig wallets before. It's like wallets for cryptocurrencies, which require 2 out of 3 keys to unlock them. So, or it could be 5 of 7 or 7 of 11 or anything you want. You can just code it. And this creates an incentive for each of the parties to actually comply with the contract, because we don't have a police or military to enforce these contracts. Like in our existing nation-state system, we comply with contracts because we are afraid that eventually if we don't comply with it, the police will come and knock on our door. So it's the threat of violence. But here you have, let's say, a network of incentives. And further, if you comply with the contract, you will be rewarded with reputation tokens, untradeable reputation tokens. And also the arbitrator will also have an interest in resolving the dispute as fast as possible, because when there's a conflict, this will also be judged. Let's say the way we are still defining how this should be done, but eventually these are the things that can be utilized in our agreements, escrow and arbitration service. So about the infrastructure that we are using, the ID and reputation systems are built by ourselves, and we're creating our own AI bot called Lucy, which is responsible for distributing these reputation tokens. I will go more into that later on. And right now, let's say for the smart contracts, for the escrow, for the tokens, and for the timestamps, we're using the Ethereum blockchain. But this can be changed in the future. We will integrate several blockchains so that everyone who creates agreements can actually choose which blockchain they want. So it will not be like our decision, it will be the decision of the people who create voluntary agreements. And for storage of any data and for searching data, we use IPFS, and to search the data, the AI bot. And about these reputation tokens. So basically, you can also explain Pangea through these reputation tokens. So right now, it's our ICO, by the way. So this is the PET Pangea arbitration token that is also being sold and has financial value because it can be traded on exchanges. But these 3 reputation tokens are untradeable, but they're still, let's say, going to be allocated. They're going to be fixed on your public key, on your address, let's say, on this network. So first of all, you have the proof of agreement token, which is the reputation that each individual citizen can get for basically complying with contracts and for offering good services. And this reputation token is distributed by the AI. It's not done through humans. Usually, like on Uber or Airbnb, you just give like 3 or 5 stars, but this is a very corruptible process. Because if you have a lot of friends, they will just give you like reputation boost, and you can just, you know, use the system. But in this case, we don't want that this ends up like reputation slavery, like in Black Mirror, for example. So we have this distributed through an AI that will actually measure how much work this contract actually cost you, and that the reputation will be based on that. So because if you would just create two fake addresses, which you could because we have pseudonymous identities, you could just make a lot of small, easy contracts and just boost your reputation. And we want to avoid this by making the reputation depending on the work that you've done. Also, we have the proof of collective reputation, which is the reputation of nations that are created on Pangea. So in this case, it's actually done through humans because it's something, let's say, more complicated than an AI still cannot do. So the citizens of each nation of Pangea will rate their nation. And yeah, so people can, let's say, reward also their nation builders, because for each of these reputation tokens, when you earn a good reputation, you will be also rewarded with pet tokens, which are financially tradable. So there's also financial incentive for complying and for having a good reputation. And finally, we have the proof of nomic reputation token, which is the reputation of laws. So the writers, let's say, of laws, they also have an incentive to upgrade the smart contracts that they offer on the market. And people can rate also the laws after they have used them. And this is also still done through humans, not through AI. And about the infrastructure, so what we already talked about before, all of this will be done not on a blockchain, but on a mesh network. And this mesh network is called Pantalasa, like the ocean around the supercontinent Pangea. So this mesh network incorporates many different technologies, and this is something that we're building on our own, which is completely standalone. And it allows us to not only operate off-chain without blockchain, but to also operate offline. Because we're using several protocols. We're using the Gossip protocol. We're using basically sneaker nets. What does it mean, sneaker nets? It means that you can just by having a network with cables, USB, Bluetooth, or anything, you can connect all of this without the internet in zones where there's low internet connectivity. You can install, for example, relays that will send signals, for example, in a 20-kilometer radius in a village in Ghana. So farmers there could potentially all make agreements with each other. And whenever someone from that network connects with the internet, it will automatically synchronize with the rest of the network. So they could also make agreements with people outside of their offline area. And all of this is working delay tolerant. So they can still keep making agreements while they're not online. And it can work separately from each other, like online and the offline zone. And yeah, like I said before, or no, I didn't mention before, but we came to the conclusion that social platforms are a thing of the past. Nowadays, more and more people are just switching to direct communication, to chat messengers, like WhatsApp, for example. And that's why we came to the conclusion that to provide this service, we need to do it through a chat interface to make it as intuitive as possible. So people in Ghana, for example, could just access these services without doing a huge onboarding process. They would just use an emoticon in their chat conversation, and automatically it would call upon a chat box who will help them to fill out a template for their smart contract. So all of this, what I've been describing until now, is just the backbone of what the government does. It's about providing legal security. But building upon that, you can provide many more services. So in the same sense, we provide this Bitnation, let's say, this legal service with arbitration, with ID and reputation and all of this. And we invite developers to basically build, help us build a DApp store of governance services. So there could potentially be services like smart love, like marriage on the blockchain. There could be land titles, like we mentioned before, birth certificates, peer-to-peer security, actual physical security services, healthcare, unemployment insurance, basic income protocol, business incorporation. All of these things that the government has been doing until now, they could be provided as a peer-to-peer service between people who voluntarily agree to do this between each other, and completely independent from their nationality, religion, or whatsoever. Like, it will be let's say, true equality through pseudonymity. And yeah, we already had more than 15,000 citizens, world citizens, basically, on our website. We'll now hopefully migrate to our app that we're developing right now. We had more than 50,000 open source contributors. More than 200,000 lines of codes have already been produced in the last 4 years. We already exist for almost 4 years. More than 5,000 contracts have been notarized on our public notary that we created in collaboration with the E-Estonia initiative. And more than 500 nations have been registered already. And more than just reaching the individual sovereignty, we can also use the blockchain to actually empower entire tribes or nations to reclaim their sovereignty. So yeah, basically any kind of community that feels like they have been left out from the international political system can use the consensus system of the blockchain to sort of get back their legitimacy, or to even just have, let's say, to have a voice in the international community. They can do so through our platform. So we encourage, let's say, every community to create a nation on our app and to like through them or through like in collaboration with each other to work on like international recognition and to provide actual services that are independent from their local jurisdiction, from their local political environment. And now when you download the Pangea app on the Google Play Store, for example, this is like a very basic version of it, but yeah, we're slowly developing this in collaboration with the community, and every 3 weeks there should be upgrades on the App Store. Also for iOS, by the way, but you have to go through the test flight app. I will tell you more about that if you want. So you can scroll through the nations that exist already. You see, for example, República Catalana. So yeah, you can also have the Pangea wallet. And to enter a nation or to become part of the nation, you have to make a little transaction because this is timestamped. So timestamp means that there's actual money being sent, so it's actually incorporated in the blockchain. But yeah, depending on the Ether price, last time I checked, it was about 10 cents. So it's not that much, I would say. And when you create a nation yourself, there's already some basic things that you can choose. Like you can choose whether this is a virtual nation or a geographical nation. It has a like geographical representation as well. You can write a nation name, the short description, and the like very important things like which kind of law will you use in your nation, how will you enforce this law, what type of government is it actually, and which services do you want to provide. And finally, you can also like choose whether you want to seek diplomatic recognition, whether you can offer, whether these services are also offered to people who are not citizens of your nation, and if this is a for-profit nation or a non-profit nation. And like for the specific points, let's say that you can choose, like this is still limited in the future. You can customize it much more and just do like the things that you like for the moment, just to have it like easier with this like variety of options. So you can choose, for example, if it's like transnational law, like in the EU, or if it should be, I don't know, like the UN principles, if it should be common law or civil law. You can choose for the law enforcement. This is like we propose to be done through IT and reputation, or if you will have, I don't know, a private security or something, if you have a geographical nation, or if you will simply use the police that we have already, nation-state law enforcement, or even international law enforcement like the UN. And then about the type of governments, you can choose from holacracy, democracy, autocracy, meritocracy, or theocracy. And for the services that you provide, it could be legal services, insurance services, social services, diplomatic or physical services. And finally, let's say for the whole implementation of all of this, we also have a go-to-market strategy. So basically we'll choose 50 nations that are now registering on the app already, and make them the incubated nations. So we have 10% of the funds that we raise will be distributed to nation builders and also to 50 DApp developers. So we will already have, let's say, wide variety and an active community using the app, let's say, in the near future to make the whole process of market adoption faster. And yeah, like I said, 10% of the ICO funds will be reserved for this ecosystem. And we will also help them to implement the code. Like, it's not necessarily only developers. And this is our roadmap. So right now we're here in Q1, and we already have, let's say, the very basic chat of the nations in the app, and you will see the most part of it is still to come. So in the next Q2, we will have agreements, we will have the arbitration market, we will have the first version of the Lucy AI bot. We will have the market of laws and public notaries. And then over the year, we will add the exocortex, which is like an oracle for the AI bot, which will have like a huge amount of input to make decisions, which should be like semi-autonomous. So we're creating that. Then we will incorporate the emoticons for the chat interface. We will allow nations to build their own currencies that they can use, so they can actually have like a self-sovereign economy. And the pets reputation rewards will be done in the last quarter of that year, and we will release the APIs so everyone can start building their own, let's say, plugins or add-ons also, and we will also release the browser version, not only for mobile. And yeah, at the end of the year, like, we're preparing the App Store, and the end of the year it will be then finally possible for everyone to create their own apps. Like, you can also build apps on the App Store. It will be here like governance apps on here. And this is our developer team, just to show that there's like really a big team working on that, and that we're like really committed to not only talk about this, but to actually make this reality, that there's tangible services that you can use in that app, and to also, as soon as possible, migrate more and more services from the centralized website to the app that is based on the mesh network and on the blockchain. And yeah, so we already had the pre-sale in the last year, in the end of the last year, and we raised $2.7 million in that. And now we have the public sale, where the goal is to raise $27.3 million. And we already made agreements with several exchanges. So these tokens that are, let's say, at your disposal, they can be also traded to other cryptocurrencies and then traded to euros or whatever you want. So yeah, we had some agreements with Shapeshift, Bank or Ox, now also Crypto Compare and Sitewise. And we're also an application process for Binance, Bittrex, and some more exchanges that we will soon announce.
Bittrex also?
We're doing the application. So let's say we will not announce this until it's done, but let's say we're in the application process. So, and about the price of the token that is available, like, the price is going down every day basically until we reach the goal, $30 million in total. And it can be at maximum 1 month, so it will end on the 25th of April at the latest. And of these funds that we raised, 51% will go directly to the technology. So it will be like almost, like, most of it will be used just to develop hardcore, like all of these functions that I was explaining before. 17% go into marketing, 22% into operations, and like I said, 10% for the nation builders and the app developers. And to round this up, our founder, Suzanne Turkowski-Tempelhoff, she said, "What we're doing is making nation-state governments entirely irrelevant. No government, whether democratic or autocratic, can survive without the consent of the subjects. In the same way Bitcoin has transformed the financial systems, Bitnation will irreversibly change the political system and the course of history." And yeah, just to give an overview, like, we already had enough marketing in the last 4 years. We were covered in all of these news outlets like Vice, Wall Street Journal, like CNN and so on. So like we already had enough media exposure to now move over from all of the marketing and community building to actually provide the software and the technology that is needed to make this a reality. And yeah, finally, welcome to the Internet of Sovereignty, enter Bitnation, your blockchain jurisdiction. You can get it on the App Store and on Google Play. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so I was talking about the whole energy, like it will need a lot of energy, so the things based on.
You're talking about the Bitcoin blockchain, but we're not using the Bitcoin blockchain. So right now we're using Ethereum, which is about to also change from proof of work to proof of stake. These are like two, let's say, architectures of blockchains. And in the proof of work architecture, yes, it's true that you're using a lot of energy to run all the nodes and for the miners and so on. But I mean, Ethereum is already about to change this, so they are not wasting so much energy, nothing compared to Bitcoin. But also we will integrate more blockchains or even other technologies like maybe Hashgraph or IOTA or I don't know, like other technologies that are also distributed and independent in that sense from central servers and central control. And yeah, I mean, we did not create our own blockchain. Like we just create the mesh network, and you could say, yeah, there's a waste of energy because, but only like a little bit compared to what Facebook, Google, and so on are doing. Because to run the mesh network, we will also provide some, let's say, extra computer power just to have more capacity when you use the mesh network, because it's like between individuals, and if you only have like 2 smartphones, you will have a very low computer power, So we will also provide some computers who will run full time just to make this more fluent process. But apart from that, no, this is like a more Bitcoin specific problem.
Excuse me, and after the ICO, the token will become a coin, right?
So it's a token, it's an ERC20 token.
It's token, it will be.
Yes, it's tradable on these exchanges. It will be tradable like after the end of the ICO.
But the token was non-trade.
The reputation tokens are not tradable, but the difference is that the reputation tokens are not tradable, and the PAT token that is sold now in the ICO, that is tradable.
And what will be the function, the use case for the?
So basically, the function is like to incentivize the users of Pangea, because it's a reward for everyone to interact and to earn those PAT tokens, so you can earn them, not only get them through investment. But also you can use it if you want for agreements, or we have not decided yet how it will be done. It could be like the way of payment for the arbitrators, but they could also accept other currencies. It's not, we will not force people to use that. Yes.
And something I thought is that, okay, you can choose the way you want your nation to be, like if you want a democracy or autocracy. But with this system of reputation, at the end, all will become sooner or later a meritocracy. There's an influence of meritocracy in the whole platform. And you have to have the democracy, but it's meritocracy at the end. To see the bot.
That is more for the individual agreements, but we're talking like about nationwide behavior there. So it could be for other things. Doesn't have, like, it could be for other services, like what we were mentioning, like what you say meritocracy, it's for these individual contracts, yes, but these nations, they will have many other things, like they will have, I don't know, like trash collection, or they will have like many other things that they can incentivize through tokens, to their own tokens, and they do not have to do this as a meritocracy. It could be a dictatorship, it could be a democracy, it could be anything.
Dictatorship is not in the
like autocracy. Autocracy.
And what about the maximum supply?
Like of PAT tokens. So there's in total 42 billion PET tokens, and only I think 1/3 of them is being sold now. I'm not 100% sure, but like there will be a reserve for a potential future round, and there's also a part that is I think goes just to bounties and just to the core contributors.
Is there a limit?
What?
Is there a limit?
All
platforms.
I'm not sure, because I think we also I think we provide every month after the end of the ICO also like 1% on the exchanges, 1 or 2, I'm not sure. But yes, there's like this sort of inflation, but I'm not sure if we're taking that from the already existing 42 billion or if that's like new ones. I'm not sure. Like if you want, I can post this in the meetup. Like we have a specific link about the token economics and so on. But there will be for sure like new tokens on the exchanges, so that it will be more liquid. And it's not only now like in the ICO, but there's also more future supply for new investors or for people who like tokens. Yes.
Can you see also the real difference why central banks just printing money in the fiat system compared to the cryptocurrency when the limits can be expanded?
Well, the difference is that this is not compulsory, that people can choose if they want to have this or not. We have to use euro because we're born here and it's just the only legal tender that is allowed. And here you can actually choose if you want to have it or not.
It's regulated by market.
I mean, so the central banks basically can at any time, just for no reason at all, just print more money. And in our case, like we have like very limited inflation. It's just can be either 1 or 2%, not more than that. And I think also will be maximum for 2 years, not more.
I mean, if Susanna and James just decide keep the bill, so all the tokens people have, 40 million tokens, worth the half. So
where's what?
I mean, the value of the tokens, if it's global tokens,
you mean that the value will decrease because there is more tokens in the market?
There is more tokens, but
I mean, this will like depend very much on how the price develops. I mean, right now the price is very low. I think the starting price on the ICO was 9 cents, and then it was gradually decreasing. And the end price, if it goes until April 25th, will be $0.009 dollars. So it will be like much less than 1 cent. And I think like we will see how the price develops. If that will be necessary or not. But at some point, maybe it's necessary if the price rises too much. For example, there would be like no incentive for anyone to go on the market anymore. So it might be good to introduce more tokens. But I'm not a specialist for this token economics, let's say. But I know what you mean, that as an investor, you'd be afraid that the value would go down. But of course, we want the value to go up. So it's not like that. But it's also not a security. I have to add this. It's not like it's not like when you buy shares of a company where you, like as an investor, have the promise of getting a dividend. No, it's not a security. It's nothing like that. It's just a utility token that you can use on Pangea to buy governance services. And it's basically, let's say, the investment in the development of this application of this technology. But it's not, let's say, guaranteed to have future dividends. So you might, if the price goes up, yes, you will have some sort of dividend if you sell it, but that's not a guarantee. Like it's not a security.
Erik, I'm asking because a lot of people said this will be the same as the banking system, the financial systems. And you want to get away from that into the more real economy, where you're exchanging services instead of speculating in money investments. And to get away from that, I'm not sure if this system is getting you away. Maybe you're capturing the same kind of attitude and egoism and this kind of investment
No, this is not just to speculate and to make money out of it, obviously, because we're building a platform behind this and we already provide the app and the technology, even though we're not ready with the ICO. Like there's a technology behind it that you can already use. It's a utility that is like obviously for usage and not for speculation.
Ethereum is also investment.
Yeah, but this is just, I mean, for the very beginning, we use the most widely, let's say, used platform for these kind of applications at the moment, but we will like change to other providers. We will like make it possible for everyone to choose the blockchain that they like. So not at the same time, but maybe you could use some protocol where it incorporates several ones, like Cosmos or I don't know. But in general, let's say it will be easier if they accept Solidity smart contracts. They have like the same language. But yeah, I mean, I think there's like no limit because there's also other, like for example, Rootstock also makes it possible to create Solidity contracts on Bitcoin. So there's like inter blockchain technologies already. And, there's also development towards that, and also for there should be possible integration with post blockchain technologies like Tango, like Hashdrive, and Holo, or I don't know what. Like there are so many others now.
I don't know why the people is talking about money, because in your whole speech you didn't mention anything about money. Because I'm very surprised. I don't know why the people talk about money. The thing is that the project seems very nice, but evidently every territory has its own kind of say government and their laws. How Bitnation will communicate with each country, or how Bitnation will be as legal in everywhere as the normal laws that are. So you show the roadmap, and in the roadmap we already saw the growth of the project, but not the implementation, the real implementation of this project. As he also talked before, and I think it's also interesting that in not so developed countries, it's easier to implement everything because the network and the structure is not so built, so Bitnation has more space to deep into. But how Bitnation will enter in every, so how Bitnation thinks their system and their protocol will be implemented.
So like we don't have the fully, let's say political roadmap yet, but like we were already thinking about some potential strategies. But this is right now like pure speculation, because before doing anything, we need the technology. Without the technology, there's no point in talking about this. But as soon as we reach a certain market adoption, it would make sense to approach government officials and to start working with them. Because just by doing business with them, they could, for example, offer services on our platform. And when we have enough market adoption, there will be also financial incentive for them. Then when they work with us, they would also automatically have to in some way recognize our nations and our laws.
Yeah, but at this time, for example, if I want to make an agree with the person and I make the agree upon Bitnation, I will do it as well in my country, my state, because at this time Bitnation is not recognizable. But also there will be no legal act as using Bitnation.
Well,
I mean, I can sell my home to a person, and I sell through Bitnation. But then 1 year, I can say no, Bitnation. This is not.
I know what you mean.
With nothing.
So for exchange of physical goods, this is of course a huge problem, because in some way you will have to give away your physical identity and so on. But for virtual goods, digital goods, I mean, this is like built-in way of settling all of this. Like you can have it in the smart contract, and you also have the escrow and so on to guarantee that someone will actually comply to send something. I don't know, like the software.
Anything of it. This. With the token. You get
yeah.
I mean, you can work for something and then be rewarded with the currency of that virtual nation, for example.
So you can take transfer.
But no, I mean, his point is that, for example, like when I use my house as a collateral for a smart contract, and I don't comply with the contract, and this person wants to come to take my house, I can just call the police and say, yeah, he's invading my property, and the contract that he's showing is invalid.
Yeah, this is what I was.
Yeah, I know. So for the moment, of course, this is also a web of trust. This is about people who want to opt out and who want to volunteer to like do things together. And of course, in the moment that someone is doing something like that, like there's also a bit like that he will be probably kicked out of the nation, or I don't know. Like they will set up their own mechanisms how to deal with this kind of misbehavior.
Because at this moment, this arbitrary system, because it's a machine, what is I mean, for example, if I have a dispute, so in a thing like that, I sell you something, and we don't make any legal state paperwork. So we only do it on Bitnation, and then we are not agreed like 1 month after, and how we resolve our dispute. So how will Bitnation interact? Or
no, wait. Like we're not like a government that intervenes or something like that. We just give the tools so people can make their own contracts, and they have to resolve between themselves. It's voluntary agreements. We're not, let's say, some sort of supreme justice that steps in or something like that. No, we just provide the software. But nations, they could do this for their citizens if they want to. But no, I mean, for like, in my opinion, for every agreement that you do, Pangea, you should already from the beginning have an arbitrator who's, let's say, overseeing the process. And that whenever someone is somehow not satisfied with how it goes, or says that someone was lying or whatsoever, the mediator will then like step in and like investigate and make his conclusions and say, use this key of this multi-sig wallet to either send back the money or service was delivered and the guy will get the money. And in any case, the also financial incentive, of course, depends on how you create the contract that uses escrow. So even when you don't know the person is pseudonymous, you will still have the incentive to comply. In the end, it depends about how you design the contract.
Yes, I say everything this because I think you said 2 or 3 things that impact me. One thing is like the rule of the state is like violence, and what happens when you don't have this violent observer? And I think that this is an issue that Bitnation at this moment doesn't have an answer. Because,
but we don't need the violence. We built the new model.
Of course.
That's the point. That's the whole point of building this.
Of course. And for that reason, I'm saying that it will be difficult to agree and to have this. So I can think that, as you said, Bitnation is a trustworthy platform, and we can make a deal, and this will be recorded. But this is like the law, but this is not the action. So if our governments have three legs, one is the executor, one is the person that thinks, and the other one is the person that redactates or creates the idea that other people have. So at this moment, for me, it seems like the executors are missing, or this arbitrary intermediate is not so powerful. Maybe.
But we actually want to, let's say, abolish the whole need to actually have this power. We will design it in a way that you do not need someone to intervene, because you have voluntary agreements between people who will customize the law for how they need it, and to make it specifically in a way, first of all, to avoid that there are conflicts, and secondly, if there's conflict, they already will have an arbitrator who's specifically experienced with that law.
Theory of games, bro.
Yeah.
Theory of games, like the common rule is what people lose. And naturally, like in a lot of communities, you see that, but maybe not here in Western societies, like in a lot of communities, there's always a natural person with a reputation, no? Like natural leaders, people trust naturally, not because they have to it. Because
they are good to the community.
and people, this opinion is like respected by the rest of the community. And it's that's not the problem.
Does someone else? Yes.
Generally, I have a lot of thoughts on the whole presentation, on the discussion. From the very beginning, I made a lot of notes. Some of my questions that were a bit specific probably will take a bit too long time. I'm just going to voice them out. We don't need to answer each and every one. I was doubting some of the things, like when I saw for-profit government, I was like, for-profit government? How, first of all, how is that going to work? Second of all, how is profit defined? Because to be honest, everybody has his own definition of what profit is. And generally, most of my questions, or some that I have in my mind, they're a bit of a philosophical nature rather than something practical. I see certain value in this. I see a lot of potential generally. However, my question basically, I'm a big fan of permaculture and certain independence of technology, basically a natural exchange of value between individuals without a necessity of defining a price of this exchange. When exchange is naturally happening, I have some food, you're hungry, you have some food, you have some shoes, I need shoes, you can give me shoes, or if you want to. So basically, there's a lot of movement in that direction as simplification, degrowth of the economy, and what I see here generally for me as like somewhat tech-savvy person is complicated already. Trying to understand all these protocols, Ethereum, this, that. Like if I had to explain this to even my mom, who is absolutely fine with internet, she knows how to browse, she uses a lot of apps, she has a smartphone, she would be lost half the way. And she's also not completely entirely technologically independent person. So what I'm generally my philosophical question is this: in what way is the relation between a natural exchange of anything between people, services, goods, and natural giving? I'm talking rather kind of more altruistic, spiritual exchange that is happening in many communities, in things like rainbow gathering, if you've ever heard of that. There's it's a system that functions perfectly, wonderfully, without such a massive, complicated system. So for me, generally, when we talk about prices and tokens, the price of a book is a book. Price of an apple is an apple. Price of a cup is a cup. So how do we define? Is it energetical value? I'm talking a bit general, in the future, how to create an economical system where an exchange doesn't necessarily need to be recorded. You know, like if we let's say I don't know, me and Rasmus, we just go and create go on an island, and he has his half of where he grows apples, I have my half where I grow oranges, and we just like we don't want any smartphones. We just like exchange. I give him that, and then all of a sudden I want to go to Brazil, and I come to Brazil and I have nothing to show for all this massive economic. Imagine there's not just me and him. There's like whole tribes of people constantly exchanging. How do we value technologically or any otherwise? How do we value all this exchange of that people did before? And it's just like for me, it's I cannot put that in my brain. How do we digitally represent like the personal worth of anybody? You know, like why do I have not the right to go anywhere? Why does the person from Amazon indigenous tribe does not have the right to go anywhere? You know, it's just like imagine I want to live alone. I'm completely self-independent. I have not done any single transaction in my life. I have my garden. I'm like growing my vegetables, and now I just want to go to Japan. What do I have to show for it for my life? You know, like I haven't done any single transaction. It's like kind of a philosophical questions that I'm very interested in platforms like this, but I really struggle personally to find answers so far.
But I can say that we already have an Earth Nation, which is also like a permaculturist community. I think the guy who's doing this, he's setting this up in the US. Don't know where exactly. But yes, we also have permaculturalists part, let's say, in this community. And but like you say about how to value these things, I think this is something that's like in their nation they will find their own ways how to do this, and they will probably not even need smartphones to do that. But then again, if it's if they want to do transactions, some like you say, someone in Japan or like far away where you have no idea who it even is, like it's all pseudonymous. Like you will need some way to guarantee that it's like real, you know, not just just some guy trying to get your money. So I mean, this is just a good way to do in trans-border agreements, because there's no jurisdiction actually responsible for when you, I don't know, trade apples with someone in Japan, because there's no world government that can intervene if the guy, like you sent him the money and he's not sending you the apples. I mean,
what if I just send him the apples and I don't need anything? How is that? Is it possible to make that kind of?
You can also do that without Pangea.
Yeah. So then the question is, why do we need Pangea if I can do that?
Well, because not everyone wants to give everything away for free.
Why not? That's the question. That is the question. That is the real question that we need to, I think, sometimes think about.
Not because people have different perceptions about property.
That's right. But there's many projects, like many new startups that's focusing on getting stuff, So like, I don't know, the startups, how they could like come into the nation, or how they could cooperate in that ways, you know, like. I mean, it's a personal decision, you know. If I was in a startup, I can sign up in the nation too. It's like an option.
Yeah.
Like an option.
No, I mean, in each nation you can make your own laws, and you can decide to also have this kind of permaculturist like code, let's say, or like law. And I mean, in the end, like it depends on everyone themselves how they want to do the things, and this is also the reason why we have this market of laws, market of nations, because everyone has different ideas, and we want to, let's say, gather like them together so they can like more easily transact and create like peer-to-peer services, even when they are far away from each other, or maybe they're not able to give away their physical identity because maybe they're persecuted by the government. So yeah, I mean, this is a way to do these things in a way without having like being very independent, let's say. So you can do the same things, but here you have, let's say, the cryptography, which is essentially the biggest feature of all of this, of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, that you can actually interact with people and trust them without actually knowing them.
Just maybe one more thing that I would want to connect. I still didn't quite really understand how is the individual reputation defined, whether has he not decided to do any transaction? If I just did not do any transaction, how do I define my reputation in a Bitnation? Something like
you can just talk to them first of all. Like you have like the opportunity to just have private chats. You can show them your curriculum if you want. You can show them pictures if you want. Like you can do many things to make yourself more trustworthy, even if you did not.
But then, that's again, I have to do all of that to just kind of prove my worth.
Sorry, you want something. But you want something, you have to get after. Want to get Japan?
Why?
Well, if you don't want to go to Japan, you don't go to Japan. If you want to go to Japan,
if I want to go to Japan, why do I have to prove my legal whatever?
Well, because if I take you by car,
I cannot go to Japan.
What do you have to prove? When now with Pangea to go to Japan, nothing.
Exactly, nothing.
But it doesn't have with Pangea to go to Japan. I don't get it. Like you have to have a passport and go to Japan. Like what has to
Yeah,
be
but like you have to be in one nation to enter another nation. I don't understand.
No, there's no physical borders. This is virtual.
Yes, but can you be part of every nation?
Yes, I'm part of 6 nations. I have a nation that is my army. And I'm thinking to make a nation of my body. It's completely free. Like you can use it. It's like protocols. You can use it, and if you don't want, you don't use it. Or if you want, you don't want. You don't use a smartphone. But you don't have a human account.
I mean, that's why we also call it borderless nations. Borderless.
Like normal ways, not even
It's a tool that you can use or not.
Exactly.
It's a way of organizing independently.
Yeah, but for example, what about the intellectual property on that? For example, if someone creates Catalonia, or create Republic of Catalonia, or create Barcelona, the city of Barcelona, or the province of Barcelona, okay? Or wherever. So what is exactly the main that you will follow? Because what is the requirements to create one of these nations?
Basically the requirement is that you have like Ethereum transaction to have a timestamp on the Ethereum blockchain. And apart from that, it should be that it's a voluntary nation, that you cannot force people to be part of your nation. That's like the only, let's say, philosophical requirement. And everything else is up to the nation builders how they want to define it.
It's a DAO, no? At the end, it's a DAO. It's considered a DAO.
I can't say this now.
Decentralized autonomous organization. You have to say my DAO is like a symbol.
You can involve your nation on Pangea into a DAO if you want. But to say that Bitnation is a DAO, no. Like you can't say this. It's a decentralized autonomous organization.
Sorry, I think that you raised a very interesting point, and I want to go further. The problem with arbitration in terms of intellectual property comes down to the question of whether Bitnation will serve as an overstate. So, for example, let's say we have ISIS nation. You know, to put a very silly example, you know, but a very real one too. Are we going to allow fanatic murderous system to make smart contracts through the same system that we're trying to use in order to evolve and even overcome the problems of nation states? Because the problem here is that if there's no regulation whatsoever, for example, I know he's got Catalonia, because I know him before. Let's say I want to name my own Catalonia. Which one is first?
No,
there's no first.
Okay. If it's only a matter of consensus, which I understand, then
there's no arbitration on the intellectual property. So, for example, now we're talking about
which intellectual property?
Now we're talking about Catalonia. Let's talk about my nation, which is my recording studio. My recording studio is a Bitnation. Of course, it's not like Catalonia because Catalonia is more of a nation. In my case, it is a problem of fundamental property, intellectual property rights because it is a recording studio. What if somebody takes it and has more friends than me? Takes my name, takes my name, takes my intellectual property. So who is going to be below this? What is the system that oversees?
Wait, can you wait a second? No, I mean, this is not about intellectual property. This is about providing services.
Yes.
And if that person provides better services than you, well, then you should provide better services than him. I mean. It's not about who's the original republic.
But it is because that's the whole system of intellectual property.
You're thinking like an owner, it's your house.
Not really. I'm thinking as an inventor. So, or as an author, or as a musician. So it is true somebody can play your piece better than you, but that's still your piece. So. In the same way, if I have a really good idea and I'm not the best one at applying it, that still don't make it their idea. So, and there's a huge amount of legislation around this for a reason. If we completely cut down on these systems that we have created in order to organize our society, where do we stand? I know that the freedom of the no fences countryside is very appealing, but you know, there's some thought to be happening there, I think.
I think that he mentioned in the speech that, and I think it's a very good point. At this moment, we only have one government, and we have to trust this government, and we have to, in a way, say yes to everything that this government says. But in, for example, Catalonia becomes independent, and then we say, okay, we won't be only government by one individual or one group of people. We will have several, and people can choose which one is the best. So at least in this moment, you won't be thinking, oh, that was my idea, and I'm the first. No, this will be for the people. This government gives me, I don't know. I only pay 50% taxes, and it's a very social oriented government, and it will be high invested in the kids, for example. And the other government will be different. And I could choose between one or other governments. At this moment, we only choose politicians that they say one thing, and then maybe they can do another thing. But if this becomes real, we can choose which one is.
I understand the workings of the nation perfectly. The point is not that one. The point is
the nation doesn't have a copyright.
But I understand. No, this is precisely what I'm going at. Is that nations are not that simple. I understand how the nation works, and I understand how nations work, and I understand the whole idea of opening up against the monopoly of the Westphalian Treaty. I understand all of that. But what I'm saying is there's a huge amount of things around what a state is built on that are not contemplated by pure free market. Who gives me the best service? For example, we already discussed this, I think, the last time we met. For example, let's talk about great club nations. I am a wealthy man. I have access to better services than you because I am wealthy. Okay? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just stretch it a little bit farther. Okay? I'm a Christian fundamentalist from the Ku Klux Klan, and I get services that you don't get because you're not a racist either. But I am, so I can get that. Is that really okay?
It's the same way now.
But why not?
Well,
is it any different now? Any different?
The point is you're not talking about just currency. You're talking about governance. Governance governance is not created in order to favor a group. Governance is created in order not to favor a group. Yeah. When governance is created to favor a group, you have fascism. So if you're trying to create something that actually overcomes nation states, you have to try to step away from fascism.
Well, the thing is that all those protocols, what they disrupt is not financial services. They disrupt hierarchy of the democratic hierarchy.
I think that
they are completely flat, all those networks. You know? Like there is no one like I'm the owner of this. You know?
But that's precisely my question.
Everything is made community, you know, community. So like you agree, we could agree like we use that here. But we speak in that language. No? It's like a language, like choosing a language. You are with some group of people, okay. And guys, you want to speak Hindu, or you want to speak in English? Like,
but that's
to speak in English, no? It's like if we choose like what community we want. It's like choosing a language when you people it's like this.
But that's the question that I'm trying to make. That's the question that I'm trying to make for Erik to answer. If there is a situation of clear abuse, will Bitnation arbitrate? That's the actual question.
It's a situation of what?
Clear abuse.
But clear abuse,
what kind of abuse is possible in this kind of system where you have voluntary agreements?
You mean if someone
doesn't matter when it's voluntary. If you have, for example, let's say, I understand that where the notion comes from, that a nation cannot be a cryptocurrency. Can you give us an example? A cryptocurrency is something that does not need to belong to any ethos. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter. But a nation does. Now, if you start creating a system where through smart contracts you create a network of I don't know. Let's put the clear example of the black market, buying and selling weapons. Is Bitnation going to act against that? And I think
I think the users of the app are simply acting against that by giving it bad reputation.
Yeah. Sorry?
I think the users of the app will simply act against that by giving it a bad reputation.
Yeah, but if a person,
if a
person wants to buy it, the other one is selling, and I can give reputation to the person that is selling because he's selling a new weapon.
Okay,
and we agree upon that.
Okay. So let's create a trade for child pornography.
Yeah, I agree that there is because
But do you? Because it's what I think they say. I didn't hear you.
Like if you create something, right? You put up this it's like recorded.
It's transparent, and everyone can see it.
Yeah, and the government today they don't have that.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand what you say. Imagine that right now we do pornography land.
Yeah. How can Bitnation?
Or not pornographers or like child pornography.
How can Bitnation?
You will have a problem as Bitnation, but maybe they will try to get you like if people start putting like in the chat, sharing illegal stuff. You know what I mean? No, but it will be a problem for Bitnation maybe.
I mean, the States.
Against the States, they will not stop probably you because it's like blockchain and.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
But at the end, I'm not afraid of these people. It's like, you don't like it, I mean, this thing of weapons, yeah, weapons are really bad, but nowadays, you can print from a deep website, you can print a 3D weapon, and you can do it with a 3D printer. You buy your 3D printer at home, and you start printing your weapons at home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just like life, it's not like that, I don't care. You can do it. Like maybe free in a way where we will have to see a lot of new stuff going on, and people will have to choose. Like we cannot like make that the state is our father that tells us what is bad. People have to be able to choose like for their own what they want in their lives or not. No?
But there are some people that cannot choose. For example, a child that is sold in the prostitution. How can she choose? What she has no right from her birth. She was born into slavery. There are 4 to 80 million children right now working in slavery.
Right now, I understand. It's like if someone was a child trafficking nation, they start using the smart contracts to maybe was asking if you as Bitnation would like to lead this nation.
I mean, we're not like a social justice movement or something like that. So I mean, the thing is, they could also do this through the wired app and have like high cryptography and have chats and the same thing.
Yeah, they already have.
So I mean, like, how does it change, like, just by having Pangea?
But that's precisely my point. My point is, I really like the idea. That's why I continue meetings and I have my own nation. I think it's a very, very neat idea. But it's a very neat idea so long as it keeps being very strong. And this is a super weak point. Yeah. Super weak point. As long as you cannot have some kind of, it sounds terrible because we're trying to get rid of states and I'm suggesting a super state. But that's precisely what I'm saying. The nation has to have some kind of control, some kind of ethics rule, and say, you know what, this just doesn't happen.
How do you blockchain? The thing is,
exactly, there has to be.
That's the philosophical questions I've been asking myself. Where is the morality of all of that? I have that moral. I come from that nation. In my nation, it's absolutely fine to, I don't know, whatever, female genital mutilation. It's like, we've been doing that for centuries. It's absolutely fine. What are you to tell me what to do with my child? It's like how much
morality does not come from blockchain. Morality does not come from technology. Morality comes from social consensus. It comes from the people. It doesn't come from technology. You cannot expect something from technology that has to be done by humans.
Yeah, this is again like, it's kind of, for me, it's like what the point that you made, for example, that we just provide the software, we like, you know,
we have the protocol.
We have the protocol. You can theoretically later on, if at some point, somehow, right now, I have like, I don't know, whatever, I have $100 million. And theoretically, I saw all the faces, I took a picture, this all web translated, and I contacted privately all the guys, okay, at some point, when we get everybody, we'll make the freaking dictatorship all over the world. How about that? And you're all like, fine, well, let's do it. But where's the chance of that not happening? You know, this is like
because the people who are interested in this are naturally, let's say, against the inclinations of the state. If they want something freer,
I don't know that.
Yeah, but
I don't know that.
But there's no guaranteed freedom. That's the point. You don't know what's going to happen with freedom. You just have to trust into, let's say, the intention.
No, but we've evolved way farther than that discussion about freedom and liberty. We're already on the 20th century. We already know that freedom is great, but to a certain extent, and that there needs to be rules and enforcements. And all of these we've already discussed at length through the last 2 centuries. So the point is not how to decide what is ethical or not, which is not moral. Moral depends to a country. Ethical is universal. You can very easily outline certain basic ethical rules that you will not overstep. And necessarily you will have to be, as a protocol, the one that enforces that. Now let's say that you do not want to be a judge, which I understand that Bitnation does not want to. If you look at, for example, the Bitcoin, what Bitcoin does is, in the way that the code is created, because the ledger is public, even though Bitcoin has enabled some black market up until now, it really is designed to go against black market. So now that people are understanding how Bitcoin works, analysts can go through the wallets and follow the transactions, so that actually Bitcoin is thought so that black market is not very well operated, well used through Bitcoin. Now, in the same way, I believe that Bitnation could somehow establish within its protocol some practices cannot happen, not from our moralistic point of view or from a super state point of view, but just as, you know, this network just does not work like this. How to implement that? That's a very much harder question.
But at the same time, if we have this kind of backdoor like in Bitcoin to trace back the identities of these people, this is not what we want. We want to provide security to our citizens, especially if they're dissidents, if they're trying to, for example, start a revolution like in the Arab Spring right now. They want to use this, and then the governments will just use this backdoor to exactly have the list of all the people who are against them. They can just kill them.
Yeah.
I mean, this is exactly what we don't want.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. That's the conundrum. That's why, for example, the whole WikiLeaks thing is still such a very good idea. It's because there's an editor. because there's an editor. Because anybody can send information there, but somebody will be there to read it and say, yeah, this checks out, or this does not check out. Without an editor, I think that you know, we have very weak point in Bitnation. But you make people. That's a good idea. So then you create a super state that is created by the consensus.
Yeah, but
all the nations. You know what I mean?
And then you have someone behind the nation deciding what is good and what is wrong, like Sultan.
But once the discussion is open, we can look for a solution. Discussion. So let's say we have a consensus of super nation where all of the nations in Bitnation can have some kind of guideline.
General agreement, nations.
Well, the army was created 32 years ago.
I know. There is some roots in the they got it. Some kind of super nation, some kind of consensus roots. Yeah.
But it should better be a convention than an organization, in my opinion. If it's an organization, it will be corrupted because it has too much power.
Convention is instead of
yeah, like international trade agreements or something like that.
Yeah, that's what a complete example of what kind of nation do you think that would deserve to be like limited from the Bitnation core team? Like some crime organizational names, like crime, to the crime, all crime nation. And what we will do is like people will not use them, they will do exactly what they can do right now from the deep web.
Yeah.
So at the end, we want to have a nation happy.
I mean, just the point is that they're in the nation, it will be public, it will be known, like what they're doing. So
they will not use it. You don't do a marketplace of killers. People that say, hey, if you kill this guy, like a smart contract.
But that's going on that way.
Because, yeah, do it in the dark web, but you don't want any increased register, even if it's still anonymous. If you're a killer, I don't think that you use like a killer.
But think about it this way. The dark web is nowadays 9 times or 90 times, the number is larger than the actual popular internet. Through the dark web, I find libraries of universities. I find a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with the dark web. But because the dark web has been used in a certain way, it has been demonized, I have to be concerned about having an onion browser on my computer, if depending on which country I am. So with Bitnation could be the same. So if you start allowing some kind of demonization, where some people will have free reign and open gates countryside policy, then one day somebody will be Bitnation is a den of thieves.
But it happens.
And I have a Bitnation. I don't want to be.
With all technology, it happens. I have an iPhone Homer and not a James the Ripper, So
but we've seen this. We've seen it with Bitcoin. It happened and it slowed down the growth of Bitcoin terribly. We've seen it with the dark web.
But with every technology it happens, like what should we do? Like police should take all the knives from the kitchens because one guy kills someone in the street. Like every technology.
This is the argument of Republicans in America about guns. Yeah, so like this is like we should not right now. Okay, let's just allow selling guns everywhere here in Europe. It's like the same philosophy.
Well, you can do it already. You want a gun? Like you can do this thing of painting your own gun at home.
Yeah, the most violent fight we've seen in Barcelona lately was 2 guys with machetes because there's no guns in the street. This argument is already won. The point is Bitnation somehow, in my opinion, needs a super state that somehow lays down the ground ethically, only ethically, as to what can happen.
Why you need the super state? It's like always like I don't know. I don't understand why you want a super state. Doing what? Erasing accounts that are like not ethical behaving.
Let's start with just child porn. Let's just start with that.
Yeah.
Let's set a commission for no child porn on Bitnation. I think everybody can agree on that, and from there let's go.
But why? Because they do it this way. I mean, Bitnation is not is not creating like a platform for the type.
Yeah, don't need to. It just shouldn't allow it.
Why? Why?
This is the thing.
You will not help them to do something that they don't do right now.
Yeah, well,
It's a
you
point,
make
it's a
it
point.
harder. You
It's a
make it
point.
harder. The point is,
It's a
if
point.
I am a Bitnation, and Bitnation is something that is so new, it is going to be very niche, and it can directly finger and say, oh, the Bitnations, and I have one Bitnation. There's no way I want anything to do on Bitnation regarding child pornography. So somebody will have to look after that. And it's not a matter, the discussion is not whether we allow regulation or not. It's just basic social organization.
In fact, I think they do not do it. They do a pedophile nation. Do you think that the pedophile wants to register and to be talking in the chat where everybody can see?
It would not be called pedophile nation. It would be called red door nation.
Yeah, whatever, red door nation. And if you do these sort of activities, you really think that you're gonna be like, you're gonna use some weird chatting or through the web, no, and like not get everybody. Like,
it depends on how good the pornography is.
You will have the police now. Like if you have a smart contacts there and they find this restaurant or whatever called, and I mean these people like I don't think that they will use Bitnation at all. It may happen. It may be a problem for Bitnation. Just in case these people start sharing in the chat photos of child. For them, I mean, it will be a problem for Bitnation.
I mean, for now, it's not even possible to share pictures.
It will be possible. It will be possible. So, like, I guess for what Sudan told me, I think that this chatting will be possible to share documents and stuff. So I mean, I understand the point.
And there will be payments possible.
But it would make people easier to find those guys. Some of those guys will not use it, I think.
No.
I don't think that these people they will use Bitnation.
Bitnation already has accounts.
They don't need it for the activities like.
I think Bitnation already has so many members and stations, so that these other things people maybe will value more.
But I don't think it will.
No, but what you say, like what I could imagine is a sort of like trade agreement, between nations that they do not interact with each other, like if they like use this kind of things, like it could be sort of certificates, but it does not require super states to have like market regulation, just like trade agreement, I don't know, for fair trade or something like that.
And if you had a false flag operation, some people may have pedophile network and just destroy it. And coming from the government going against you. Do you do anything?
I mean, the same way that you could not do anything about it on any blockchain when someone registers something on it, because it's just there.
And then the rumors spreads out and you're destroyed.
The chat is
I mean, is the internet destroyed because child porn exists?
That's a big thing.
No, but the internet is a protocol like Bitnation. It's only like the house where you can do everything on the house, but the house doesn't have any representative issue about
No, but
because it's the place where you can do a lot of things.
Rumors can destroy it.
Yeah, but he has a very good point about yes, you can find child pornography on internet, but what has internet to do with that? I mean, it's the place where you can find it, but you can find other places.
I can just stop and say this is the whole thing, and this is the whole area. I mean, if you are destroying a brand of Bitnation, you are not. And you see that, I mean, so many things today, false, fake news, etc., is destroying people.
Yeah, but the platform underneath it, the technology they're developing, new brand.
I think that it works. It's very useful if we dimension things. Okay, let's say I understand that Bitnation is trying to be a protocol and it's trying to be, let's say, like an Ethereum for smart contracts. Okay, but it is not Ethereum. It's not that open. Bitnation is specializing itself in governance, and the fact that it does that makes its purpose a lot more narrow. So, which is interesting, I think, it's one of the differences. But what that means is that you cannot claim, once you're doing strictly governance, you cannot, and you're tackling problems with government, which are very tricky, you cannot say, hey, I just put the platform. If there's child pornography on Facebook, believe me, Facebook is fucking big. And it has a lot of people doing that. And we're talking about a company that is spread way farther than Bitnation. So if you're trying to give government services and you have a very clear aim politically, which I think it's good, it's open, but it's very clear. You're trying to give more freedom in terms of governance. You're going into a certainly a little bit more anarchistic system, and certainly you're trying to be better for mankind. This needs to be reflected into how these products. It's not a flat. It's not like AT&T. This is the big story of, you know, should AT&T cables?
It's open source of Bitnation. Yes. It's open source. So why don't, if you don't like Bitnation, why do you take the code of Bitnation? You don't know how it goes. And you build another platform like Bitnation where there's a super state that you want.
I'm not saying I don't like Bitnation. I'm saying I like it so much. I'd like it to be better.
You can do it. It's open source. You can take the code of Bitnation and build a super state that does this thing that you want. And you can use this thing and call it.
But this is what I'm doing. I'm hacking the source.
That's the thing. You can hack and they can actually want competitors because we're starting up in the market.
They work like a piece of Aragon open, but most lines of Aragon. So the thing of open source system is like,
I think that it's very easy to get. It's really very easy with this situation of blockchain technology and so on to get lost and forget that if you don't have a solid philosophical foundation, you're lost. You're gone. I mean, look.
Yes.
You know. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to know how you guarantee the welfare state. I mean, particularly if you want to go on with this kind of welfare state, like vision, social aids, pensions when you are like 65 years old, these kind of things. How you guarantee? Because only with the smart contracts, I cannot understand.
Yeah, you can make so you could, for example, have a sort of you could have, for example, a sort of transaction web where, like in your nation, with every transaction, there's like a small voluntary tax just by the people because they're in that nation. This will just contribute to some funds, for example, for health insurance, for retirement, these kind of things. So yes, it is possible to design a like token in a way that there's like automatic, let's say, costs, just extra, like the miners fee that you already have just for using cryptocurrencies. You could also add on top of that just a small fee for, I don't know, for social welfare fund.
But they will foresee how much percentage they need for any. I mean,
that's up to the nation builders. That's up to them.
They don't know how many people will add.
I mean, this is like a market of ideas, you know, like it's experimentation. It's about seeing what works the best. Of course, we don't have the ready-made solution.
Yeah.
But you can make already with the smart contract. You'll make right now, like if you say at 65, I want to retire. Now you're gonna put like euros every week, and then you calculate the day that you want to retire.
And the one that you will die. because otherwise you'll run out of money. Or somebody will have to put money into that token.
Why?
No,
that's how retirement works.
But it's not connected.
No, it's not connected. You're doing it by your own means.
Yes.
If you want right now, you can do your retirement system without banks or without insurance or without whatever. You can do it for your own. And decide like, okay, the amount I want, the amount of money I get when I'm 65. All you can do is like 65, and I got that amount of money. I want it to be sure every month. Okay, maybe I'll get like.
You will have to decide when you die.
Well,
you do it on your own.
It's your own, man. Like it's your choice. You can do it without banks and without lawyers and without notary system. You can do it. Right now, you can do it.
No, but
so individual, yes, but only if you have money. I mean, if you don't have anything, or you was born blind or without any possibilities.
That's the solidarity point that we're talking in the meetup.
No, but in any case, solidarity is local only. What we're doing is like this more or less, let's say, overhead thing to enable nations to do local governance projects. So this is something they do on their own, but we just give them the funds for that. So we give them the resources to do that, but it's still up on the local people to, let's say, enforce the solidarity. We're just providing this platform. We're not like sending UN troops everywhere to make everyone solidarity.
Since is everything completely open source?
Yes. I mean, the API, as you've seen, will be released in the end of this year. But now already you can see like most of the code in the GitHub. So the repositories.
The API will be there now, so it's in the
right now it's like in the like development, and it's like also one of the key things that competitors would like try to take away, and without that I think would have problems now in the ICO. But like okay, I'm also not fully into this strategic questions about this technology, but most of the things are on GitHub. I mean, if you look on the Pangea, like mobile client, I don't know, GitHub repository, there's so many things actually. Of course, like there are some parts like about the smart contracts, for example, that we paid a lot of money for, and we're like still waiting, let's say, to release this API. But yes, in the end of this year, it will be open.
The last question, I think, would be how do you ensure anonymity?
Anonymity.
Yeah, because a smartphone in my eyes is not very safe.
Yeah,
because where I am.
I mean, when we have like the secure backend, but of course, then it's also about yourself that we need to teach you like how to be secure and how to have cyber like solid cyber security measures in order to not be traced by your government. Of course, it always depends like on your situation. If you like have a really insecure situation, then you will probably already have some knowledge about that when you look already for Pangea for encrypted call communication. So, but yeah, I think also for the meetups, the idea is also for the future. I mean, now this is like also an introductory meetup, but to also teach these kind of things to people, like how to use mobile phone security, or I don't know, how to use the Bitnation passports when you cross borders, or I don't know, like more workshops where how to actually use the technology in your everyday life.
Just one last technical question. If there was a catastrophe, could Bitnation bring down its own network?
Bitnation will what?
Bring down its own network.
Shut down, you mean?
Shut down.
Like a self-destruction button? Or?
No, I mean any terrible problem within the system of the software, within the workings of the software, whatever, like a real problem for the Bitnation community. Could Bitnation go on and decide, look, we're shutting down the network for a week, fixing it, and then coming back online in 1 week? Just a second.
I mean, it would be possible to shut down the GitHub repository, but I mean, for now, it's possible to like clone that, and that someone else could just set it up. So I'm not 100% sure how the app operates. I think at the moment, yes, but the idea for the future is to become as decentralized as possible. So we will not have that control anymore. Just shut it down.
So eventually,
for example, the dictator comes to us and says to us like, "Shut it down or we kill you." They should not be this option. It should be like completely decentralized, you know.
but do you have a date for that to happen? I mean, we're talking about blockchain, distributed ledger. Distributed ledger cannot be shut down as long as it starts having a community that shares that ledger. When does this ledger become so public that it cannot be shut down? I understand it can be shut down.
We don't have our own. Wait, we don't have our own blockchain.
But
we're using Ethereum blockchain at the moment, and if you would want to shut it down, you would have to shut down the Ethereum blockchain.
No, but you said that you were stepping out of Ethereum, right?
Yeah, we're going to other blockchains as well, so they'll be harder to shut it down because they'll be on different blockchains.
But you'll be able to shut down your mesh.
Yes, because the mesh basically depends if there's like at least 2 people or 2 nodes in the mesh that are working.
Okay.
So
they said you put computers and servers in order to have more power and be able to
computation power. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, what I'm going at here is that I understand how blockchain works, and I understand that Bitnation, while it's inside working only with Ethereum, it cannot be shut down because Ethereum cannot be shut down. If it works with different blockchains, it's better because they cannot be shut down. But if there's a mesh, which is your own network, and that network is not decentralized, then Bitnation can be shut down.
Well, it will be decentralized because the app is available for everyone to download. So
okay, so it will be okay. That's what I mean. So the mesh will be free.
Yes.
And another question also now, the government. If you had a Assange database, so there's no papers, and this was put in the Bitnation network, and the United States, so the government of Spain came and did it all, shut it down somewhere. Is it possible?
But it's not stored. We don't store data. Like I showed before, the files are stored in IPFS.
Okay, so you can say we will continue, or we can stop us.
Like you would then have to attack the IPFS network, not us, if you want to shut down the storage of these files.
You will not be hurt, you can say. Can never be hurt. Sure.
I mean, of course, right now, yes, of course, because it depends on the leadership, let's say, of the core team to build the app and the technology. So at the moment, yes, but we want to reach a point where it becomes decentralized. Yes.
The one charged by terrorism,
what?
When people here in Spain is charged by terrorism, just by sitting in the highways and stopping the traffic. I mean, there's so many laws that we can't break with. I'm just asking, are you sure you will be shut down by government?
No, I mean, but at the moment we're not infringing any law. We're like in a gray zone. It's not forbidden to just create a jurisdiction as a service software.
Some of you users can break it. Some Bitnations inside.
No, I mean, we also have a lawyer, like 2 lawyers, to actually take care of these things and who know like about what is happening in the world, like in regulation. So we do have an eye on that.
I'm asking because I like.
Yeah, we see a big bottleneck with the field of the definition, right? How do you put systems individuality person of someone in case in a nation you want to have a voting system? This is what we have been talking sometimes, like how do you do that it is not a bot?
So that's another issue that we didn't even talk about here. It's the whole biometrics issue. Because our founder, Susan Tarkovsky-Temple, she says if you put biometrics on the blockchain, that will lead to the next Holocaust. Yeah, because you can basically trace down people based on their race, on their skin, or like on all kinds of things that we have to have biometric data. And it will be like an open ledger for everyone to use and to abuse, and like it's horrible. So we don't want that. So we need to prove a person's identity without using their biometric data.
Yeah, but how?
I've actually seen some interesting concepts in my previous meetups. One was to basically use different ways of signatures. So there's this organization called Unicode, which is responsible for all the keyboards. You know, Unicode? It's like software basically to have like all the different keyboard layouts. If you had that as an open source program, that you could have millions of different keyboards on the blockchain. Then everyone would have like their own like keyboard with their handwriting to prove their identity. They would just write a sentence. It would be like unique, and would like somehow like recognize the what?
What is it? Within the keyboard?
The Unicode. I mean, that's the organization that exists now, but it's just an idea. It's just that someone came up with. Another approach would be to, for example, have something in the ground that measures how you walk. And every human being has a different way of walking. These sensors could, for example, like trace your signature and how you walk. And you could then prove that you're yourself and just walk. or like many other things. For example, now it's a new project called Emotion Chain. By using a smartphone camera, they check your emotional reactions to different things. So you're exposed to different things that trigger either that you're angry or happy or whatever. And every human being has a unique pattern how they react emotionally. And to prove it, like they would not save the facial data, but they would only save the pattern of how the face moves. And that could be encrypted and so on. And then just by like doing the same test again, you can prove that you're yourself.
When you get hacked.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
So there's already some concepts on how to do that. But of course, the implementation will take a lot of more time.
Yeah, I think Susan was talking about doing parties, you know, like sometimes like.
Yeah, like how did they call it? Proof of anonymity. No, some kind of parties. Yeah, but basically that's a thing that Joe and I developed. But that's not to prove your identity. That's just to prove that you're human. Because you also have the problem that the network could be flooded with bots and not with humans. And then to prove that you're human, you would have like randomly allocate all of these pseudonymous users, and they, like with their public key address, join this, and you basically just see if the others are also humans. And if it's at least 4 or 5 it's humans, then they win and they get some points. So you also developed some game for that. So yeah, but it could be done not only for Bitnation, but for all kinds of crypto projects where you have pseudonymous accounts. Any more questions? Or concerns or ideas, or I don't know.
Many more, but I'm not gonna test you.
So if you want to drink something, there's also the bar, so please serve yourself. And thanks so much for coming, everyone.